Can a single dollar rewrite a life? A tycoon strides through New York's financial district, his empire unshaken, until a little girl selling homemade treats utters words that freeze him. "You remind me of my father." He turns, heart pounding, caught in a moment that will unravel his world. Welcome to a tale of loss, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family, brought to you by daily narrated stories. Picture yourself amidst autumn's golden leaves swirling around skyscrapers, the city's pulse thrumming. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment and join this journey. Elias Thornton emerges from Thornton Ventures' polished marble lobby, his navy suit sharp, his name synonymous with billion-dollar triumphs. At 44, he owns a penthouse overlooking the Hudson and a garage of rare Ferraris. Yet a hollow ache festers, untouched by wealth. Imagine you are Elias, success at your fingertips, but something missing. Subscribe to Daily Narrated Stories. We are racing to 1,000 subscribers to share stories that touch your soul. The city buzzes with blaring horns and swinging briefcases. The Carver deal is sealed, his assistant, Nora, Coles, clutching a tablet, her heels clicking to match his stride. Projections show a 40% return. Elias nods absently. The numbers dull, their thrill lost years ago, replaced by an unease like a half-forgotten melody. "Your driver is ready," Nora says, gesturing to a gleaming Rolls-Royce. Then he sees her, a girl, 7 at most, at a rickety cardboard table. Her chestnut hair glows in the sunlight, and her hands arrange treats with fierce care. Her emerald eyes, flecked with amber, root Elias to the spot, his heart skipping, a whisper of something familiar stirring. "I will walk," Elias murmurs, waving off Nora's puzzled glance. The crowd parts as he nears the girl's table, her hand-painted sign trembling in the crisp autumn breeze. "Treats for sale. $1. How my Nana get better." Each cookie is a small prayer, placed with a child's solemn precision. The sight tugs at a buried memory. Elias at 8, watching his mother arrange roses in their cramped apartment, her trembling fingers defiant against illness, her smile a beacon of warmth. He kneels, his polished shoes scuffing the gritty sidewalk, and meets the girl's gaze. "What is your name?" he asks, his voice soft, almost lost in the city's clamor. "Sophie Bennett," she replies, her voice a clear bell, slicing through the chaos of honks and chatter. "My Nana taught me to make these, but she's sick, so I am helping." Pride shines in her emerald eyes, but worry flickers beneath, a shadow too heavy for her small frame. Elias feels a pang, admiration for her courage, regret for a life too consumed by boardrooms to notice such quiet strength. "That is brave, Sophie," he says, his throat tightening with an unfamiliar ache, like a door creaking open to a forgotten room. "I will buy them all." Sophie's jaw drops, her eyes wide as twin moons. "All of them? Really?" As Elias hands her a stack of crisp bills, a worn photograph slips from her apron pocket, fluttering to the pavement like a fallen leaf caught in the wind. He reaches for it instinctively, and the world contracts to a single, shattering moment. It is him, younger, his face alight with unguarded laughter, his arm wrapped around a woman whose smile once anchored his nights, Elise Bennett. "That is my daddy," Sophie says, gently reclaiming the photo with small, careful fingers. "I never met him, but Mommy said he was special. Before she went to heaven, she told me he would find us someday." She tucks it back into her apron, oblivious to the earthquake she has triggered in Elias's soul. Elias cannot breathe. The city's roar, taxis, footsteps, distant sirens, fades to a dull hum, leaving only Sophie's face. Those emerald eyes are his, the chestnut curls a mirror of his mother's. "Thank you, mister," she says, counting her earnings with meticulous care, each bill smoothed flat. "Nana will be so happy." A tear escapes Elias's eye, hot and unbidden, tracing a path down his cheek. The truth crashes over him like a tidal wave, relentless and cold. This is his daughter. His mind reels, grasping at fragments of a past he had buried under ambition. How could he not have known? What had he missed? That night, Elias paces his penthouse, the city's skyline glittering coldly beyond floor-to-ceiling glass, a cage of wealth. The sterile elegance of his home. Marble counters, abstract sculptures, a silence so thick it hums, feels like a prison closing in. Memories of Elise flood back, sharp as broken glass, each one a cut to the heart. They met a decade ago at a charity gala, her vibrant energy slicing through the room's polished pretense like a beacon. An art historian with dreams of opening a gallery, Elise spoke of paintings with a passion that rivaled his drive for power. Her laughter, bright and unfiltered, had drawn him like a moth to flame, promising a life beyond the ledgers and boardrooms that defined him. A childhood memory surfaces, raw and vivid, adding weight to his turmoil. Elias, 10, sits by his mother's bedside in their dim apartment, the air heavy with antiseptic and sorrow. Her frail hand clutches his, her voice a whisper through cancer's grip. "Promise me you will find joy, Elias, not just success," she says, her eyes fierce with love. He had nodded, tears falling, but after her death, he buried that promise under ambition, molded by his uncle Victor Langston into a machine of wealth. Elise had rekindled that buried spark, her presence a reminder of the boy who once dreamed of more than profit. Their 6-month romance was a stolen season. Weekend escapes to the Catskills, where they hiked misty trails and shared secrets under starlit skies. Late-night debates over Monet's delicate water lilies versus Picasso's bold, fractured lines. Burnt pancakes in her tiny loft, their laughter filling the air like music. She had awakened a longing for connection, for a life where love outranked deals. But then came the Frankfurt deal, a chance to quadruple Thornton Ventures' global reach and cement Elias's legacy. Victor, who had raised Elias after his parents' death, was relentless, his voice a steady drumbeat of expectation. "This is your moment," he said over scotch at their monthly dinner, his eyes gleaming with the weight of their shared empire. "Do not let distractions derail you." Victor had been more than a mentor, his only family, instilling ambition as a sacred creed, a shield against the world's chaos. "Elise is different," Elias had argued, his voice wavering with rare vulnerability. Victor's face had hardened, his gaze narrowing like a predator sizing up prey. "Your father thought love was enough too," he said, voice low and cutting. "He died penniless, leaving you to me. Do not repeat his mistakes." The memory of his final night with Elise cuts deeper now, a wound reopened. Her apartment glowed with the soft flicker of lavender candles, their warmth mingling with the scent of her herbal tea. She sat across from him, her chestnut hair catching the light, her eyes bright with hope. "I've been offered Florence," she said, her voice tentative but warm. "A curator position. It is not far from Frankfurt. We can make it work." But Victor had already orchestrated Elias's future. Elite meetings with European tycoons, strategic introductions to power brokers, a calculated engagement to Vivian, a media heiress whose family could amplify Thornton Ventures' influence. "I need to focus," Elias told Elise, his voice hollow, betraying the love that burned in his chest. Her gaze shattered, shimmering with unshed tears. "So this was just a fling for you?" she asked, her voice breaking like glass. He left the next day, a coward's note, a bouquet of roses, and nothing more. Her 3 calls that first week in Frankfurt went unanswered. He convinced himself it was the right choice, that ambition was his true north. Now, staring at his phone, Elias dials Elise's old university, his hands trembling as if the call might summon her ghost. Could they have records of where she went? The shock of Sophie, a daughter he never knew, sends his heart racing, each beat a question he cannot answer. A call from Victor interrupts, his voice sharp through the line. "The Tokyo investors need you tomorrow," he says, irritation clipping his words. "I am rescheduling," Elias replies, startling himself with the steel in his voice. "What is more important than this deal?" Victor demands, his tone edging toward disbelief. "Everything," Elias says, ending the call before Victor can argue. The weight of his words settles over him. Everything has changed, and there is no going back. Morning light filters through Elias's penthouse, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors, but sleep eludes him. Sophie's face haunts his thoughts. Those emerald eyes, that determined smile, the way she smoothed each dollar bill with care. His routine feels absurd. The treadmill's mechanical hum, the kale smoothie's bitter tang, the Bloomberg terminals chirping market updates from Tokyo to London. It is all meaningless now, a hollow echo of a life he no longer recognizes. He cancels all but the Tokyo call, his assistant Nora blinking in shock. "Are you sure, sir?" she asks, her brow furrowing. Elias nods, his focus elsewhere, his fingers typing Elise Bennett, art historian, into his laptop, each keystroke a step into the abyss. The search yields a handful of academic papers, a faculty photo of Elise's radiant smile that twists his heart, and then an obituary that stops his breath. Elise, dead from leukemia last year, survived by her daughter, Sophie, and mother, Clara. Grief crashes over him like a rogue wave, cold and relentless, stealing the air from his lungs. She is gone, forever. A medical fundraiser for Clara Bennett catches his eye. A small photo showing Sophie and an elderly woman with Elise's warm, crooked smile. The campaign has raised just $3,000 of its $200,000 goal, a stark reminder of their struggle. Elias's wealth, once a shield, now feels like a mockery, a glittering cage that kept him from the only thing that mattered. A faint memory nags at Elias, sharpening his unease. Months ago, at a board meeting, Victor had glanced at a photo on Elias's desk, a candid shot from the gala where he met Elise, her smile frozen in time. "Old flames," Victor had asked, his tone too casual, his eyes too sharp, like a hawk circling prey. Had he known about Elise even then, sensed a threat to his carefully constructed empire? The thought plants a seed of doubt, its roots curling deep, whispering of secrets Victor might still hold. Victor storms into Elias's penthouse, his silver hair immaculate despite the early hour, his tailored coat dusted with morning frost. Canceling meetings? The Tokyo team is livid. He snaps, his voice a blade honed by years of authority. Elias hesitates, then speaks, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "I met a girl yesterday, selling treats on Fifth Avenue. She had a photo of me with Elise." Victor's face flickers, recognition, perhaps fear, before smoothing into a mask of indifference. "A scam," he says sharply, leaning closer, his cologne sharp and invasive. "A calculated sob story to prey on your wealth." "She is my daughter," Elias insists, his voice rising, defiance breaking through. "She has my eyes, my mother's chestnut hair." Victor scoffs, his lips curling. Thousands in this city could claim the same. "Discreetly verify it, Elias. Do not be naive." Elias finds Clara's Brooklyn address from the fundraiser page, a modest apartment far from his glass and steel empire. Swapping his suit for jeans, a rarity that feels like shedding a second skin. He stands before a weathered brownstone, its chipped paint and creaking steps telling stories of resilience and survival. His finger hovers over the buzzer for apartment 4C, his pulse hammering like a war drum. What can he say? "I might be your granddaughter's father." Feels like a line from a bad script. Absurd and impossible. A small voice calls from behind, bright and unguarded. "Treat man." Sophie bounds up the steps, her backpack bouncing, her chestnut curls catching the sunlight. Clara trails slowly, leaning on a cane, her face etched with fatigue and quiet strength. "You bought all my treats," Sophie tells Clara, her smile a burst of warmth. Clara's eyes narrow, studying Elias with a mother's instinct, sharp and unyielding. "Very generous," Clara says, her tone laced with suspicion, each word measured. "Sophie, go inside." Sophie shrugs, unfazed, her trust in the world still untouched by its cruelties. "He is nice, Nana," she says, disappearing through the door with a skip. Alone, Clara's gaze pierces Elias, a silent challenge. "Who are you really?" she demands, her voice low but fierce, carrying the weight of a mother's loss. "Elias Thornton," he says, meeting her eyes, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I knew Elise years ago." Recognition dawns in Clara's expression, followed by something harder. Anger, perhaps grief. "You are him," she says, her voice trembling, a crack in her armor. "I did not know about Sophie," Elias pleads, the words spilling out like a confession. "I swear I did not." Clara's shoulders slump, the weight of years pressing down. "Elise tried to tell you," she says flatly, her eyes distant, lost in memory. "Letters, calls, even visited your office, 7 months pregnant." No response. The revelation hits Elias like a fist to the chest, stealing his breath. "I never got any messages. I was in Frankfurt," he says, the excuse sounding hollow even to him, a flimsy shield against the truth. Clara sighs, suddenly looking every one of her 70-plus years, her face a map of sorrow. It does not matter now. Elise is gone, but Sophie remains. She gestures to the door, a reluctant invitation. "Come up." The apartment is small but warm, books lining every wall, their spines worn from love and time. Elise's influence lingers in the faded curtains, the framed sketches of Parisian streets, the faint scent of lavender that clings to the air. Photos chronicle a life Elias missed. Sophie as a newborn, her curls damp against Elise's cheek, Elise beaming at her first art exhibit, her pride radiant. Sophie's preschool graduation, her grin wide and fearless. "Are you rich?" Sophie asks bluntly, perched on a worn couch, her legs swinging, her curiosity unfiltered. Clara admonishes her gently, a soft Sophie, but Elias smiles, a lump rising in his throat. "I work with money, helping it grow," he says, his voice catching on the simplicity of it. "Could you help Nana's money grow?" Sophie asks, her eyes bright with hope. "She needs medicine that costs lots." Clara's face flushes, embarrassment warring with exhaustion. "Sophie, enough." Elias notices the stack of medical bills tucked under a book, their red past-due stamps glaring. Orange pill bottles crowd the counter, a silent testament to Clara's battle. "I would like to help," he says carefully, choosing each word like a step across thin ice. "Not charity, responsibility, if Sophie is mine." Clara studies him for a long moment, her gaze searching for cracks in his sincerity. Then she glances at Sophie, who is showing Elias her favorite picture book, her fingers tracing the illustrations with reverence. "Look at her," Clara says, her voice softer now, almost a plea. "Tell me what you see." The resemblance is undeniable. His daughter, in every curve of her smile, every amber fleck in her eyes. Elias's heart aches with the weight of lost years, a decade stolen by choices he cannot undo. The afternoon with Sophie is a bittersweet gift, each moment a thread stitching him to a life he might have had. She shows him her crayon drawings, bright galaxies, smiling stick figures under starry skies, and chatters about her school's art club, her enthusiasm a mirror of Elise's passion. Her stories, filled with wonder at glitter paints and new friends, pierce Elias with joy and regret, a reminder of all he has missed. Clara agrees to cautious visits, her voice firm but not unkind. "For Sophie's sake, we take this slow," she says, her eyes holding his, a warning and a hope intertwined. Back at his penthouse, Victor's voice crackles through the phone, unyielding. "I had you followed," he admits, unapologetic, his tone clipped. A billionaire vanishing raises flags. Elias tenses, anger flaring like a spark in dry grass. "She is not a scam," he snaps, his voice raw. "Get a DNA test," Victor urges, his words sharp as a blade. "Do not let sentiment cloud your judgment." A memory surfaces, unbidden, as Elias stares at the city lights, their cold glow mocking his turmoil. Elise's voice, soft and teasing, echoes from a rainy night in her loft. "You see patterns and numbers, Elias, but can you see the beauty in chaos?" He had laughed, kissing her forehead, not knowing it was one of their last nights. Now, that memory fuels his resolve, a beacon guiding him to the truth. 3 days later, DNA results arrive in Elias's private office, delivered in a sealed envelope that feels heavier than it should. The report is unequivocal. 99.9999% probability of paternity. He is a father, has been for 7 years, blind to it. Relief battles terror as he stares at the numbers. Sophie's face flashing in his mind. Her smile, her courage, her trust. His assistant, Nora, delivers another bombshell. Mail and phone logs from a decade ago, retrieved from the firm's archives. 7 calls from Elise, each marked handled with no messages forwarded. 3 letters, her elegant handwriting on the envelopes, logged as received but never delivered to him. Who managed these? Elias asks, his voice tight, a storm brewing in his chest. Mr. Langston's office, Nora replies, her tone cautious. Standard protocol during your Frankfurt assignment. Betrayal sears through Elias, hot and jagged, like a blade twisted in his gut. Victor, his mentor, his only family, deliberately kept Elise from him. Had he known about Sophie all along? Seen her as a threat to the empire he had built? The thought is a poison spreading fast. Clara's call interrupts his spiraling thoughts, her voice strained through the line. The hospital denied my treatment again, she says, exhaustion threading her words. And a private investigator came asking about us, questions about Elise, Sophie, whether we had contacted you before. Elias's grip tightens on the phone, his knuckles whitening. Only Victor would send an investigator, his reach as long as his ambition. I will handle it, Elias promises, his mind racing, piecing together a puzzle he is only beginning to see. Thank you for telling me. He pauses, then adds, his voice thick. I got the test results. A long silence stretches between them. I never doubted it, Clara says finally, her voice softening. Elise always said you had determination in your eyes, your best and worst trait. Elias recalls a recent boardroom moment, the memory sharpening his suspicion. Victor had lingered after a meeting, his fingers brushing a file on Elias's desk labeled personal. Keeping secrets? Victor had asked, his smile too sharp, his eyes glinting with something Elias could not name. Now he wonders, was Victor digging even then, sensing a crack in the empire he had shaped? The thought chills him, adding urgency to his next steps, a clock ticking in the silence. In a Brooklyn park, autumn leaves crunch underfoot as Elias pushes Sophie on a swing. Her laughter a melody he is learning by heart. The park smells of damp earth and roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor, grounding him in this fragile new reality. The air is crisp, the sky a bruised purple, and Sophie's chestnut curls fly behind her like a banner. Do you like school? Elias asks, steadying the swing, his hands careful but sure. Art is fun, but math is tricky, Sophie says, her nose scrunching in a way that mirrors Elise's when she puzzled over canvas. I can help, Elias offers, a tentative bridge across the years. I'm good with numbers. Sophie tilts her head, her eyes searching. Why did I not know you before? Were you mommy's friend? Elias's heart stutters, the question a knife's edge. Yes, he says softly, his voice barely above a whisper. A long time ago, before you were born. Her words linger, a reminder of the truth he is not yet ready to share. A secret too heavy for her small shoulders. Clara joins him on a nearby bench, her scarf catching the breeze, her cane resting against her knee. Elise told Sophie her father was kind. Far away, she says, her voice low, threaded with memory. Nothing cruel, despite everything. Elias pulls a small package from his coat. A children's book on constellations, its cover shimmering with stars, a nod to Sophie's love of the night sky. She is fascinated by stars, he explains, handing it to Clara. She examines it, her expression softening, a crack in her guarded wall. Thoughtful, she says. The treatment is working, by the way, she adds, her eyes meeting his, a knowing glint within them. The hospital is suddenly unconcerned about insurance. Elias nods, aware his quiet arrangements have eased Clara's burden. Though he treads carefully, respecting her pride. "What are your intentions with Sophie?" she asks, her directness cutting through the moment like a blade through silk. "To be in her life," Elias says, his voice firm, unwavering. "Nothing is more important." Sophie runs up, clutching a giant maple leaf, its edges curling like a treasure map, its vibrant red glowing in the fading light. "It is perfect," she declares, placing in Elias's palm with the reverence of a child offering a crown. The gesture, so small yet profound, feels like a fortune no bank could hold, a moment of grace he will carry forever. As Sophie skips back to the swing, Elias recalls a rare moment from his teenage years, sitting with Victor on a Connecticut estate, the air thick with summer and ambition. "Family is a luxury, Elias," Victor had said, his voice cold as the whiskey in his glass. "It weakens you, diverts you from greatness." At 16, Elias had believed him, internalizing the lesson like scripture. Now, Sophie's leaf in his hand mocks that creed, its fragile beauty a rebuke to Victor's sterile world. December's chill wraps New York in a frosty embrace, the city glittering under a veil of frost. Elias waits outside Sophie's elementary school, his breath clouding in the crisp air, his scarf tucked tight against the wind. Their routine has taken root. Math help on Wednesdays, museum trips on Saturdays, each moment stitching him closer to his daughter, a patchwork family forming stitch by stitch. Today, it is the aquarium, a promise that lights up Sophie's eyes like stars. The school bell rings, sharp and clear, and Sophie races out, her backpack bouncing, waving a math test with a triumphant grin. "I got an A," she announces, thrusting the paper at him, the red 100 a badge of her pride. Elias examines it with mock seriousness, his lips twitching into a smile. "Brilliant, Dr. Bennett," he says, their private joke drawing a giggle that warms the air between them. At the aquarium, Sophie's awe at glowing jellyfish mirrors Elise's wonder at art, her face bathed in the tank's ethereal blue light. She presses her nose to the glass, her questions endless, each one a spark of curiosity. "Fish live such short lives," she muses, her voice soft, her eyes distant. "Like mommy." Elias's heart clenches, the comparison a dagger to his chest. "Yes," he manages, his voice thick, "but they shine brightly like her." The moment lingers, a quiet bond forming in the underwater glow, a fragile thread connecting past and present. Over hot chocolate later, Sophie stirs marshmallows with scientific precision, her focus endearing, a scientist in a 7-year-old's frame. "Why do you not have kids?" she asks suddenly, her eyes searching his, innocent but piercing. Elias nearly chokes on his drink, the question catching him off guard. "Well, I have been very busy with work," he admits, the truth feeling inadequate, a half answer to a child who deserves more. "Too busy for a family?" Her question strikes at his core, peeling back years of rationalizations, exposing the emptiness beneath. "I thought I was," he says, his voice low, raw with honesty. "I was wrong." Sophie nods, as if this explains the universe, her wisdom humbling him. "Nana says people matter more than work," she says, sipping her cocoa, her lips smudged with chocolate. Clara invites Elias in later, a first without Sophie's prompting, a small but seismic shift. "She talks about you non-stop," Clara says, watching Sophie pin a new aquarium sticker to her backpack, her movements precise. For Christmas, Elias joins them, the invitation a milestone, a door opening wider. The apartment glows with twinkling lights, the air rich with cinnamon and pine, a warmth no penthouse could replicate. He brings a star-shaped pendant for Sophie, its silver catching the light, and a handcrafted music box playing Moonlight Sonata, Elise's favorite, its notes haunting and tender. Sophie gives him a crayon drawing, stick figures holding hands under a starry sky, Elise a glowing star above, watching over them. "It is us," she explains, pointing to each figure, her voice bright with pride. Elias kneels, emotion choking him, his eyes misting. "It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he says, meaning every word, his heart full to bursting. Late one night, Clara appears at Elias's office, a weathered shoebox in her hands, its edges frayed from time. The corporate sleekness of Thornton Ventures feels sterile against her quiet strength, her presence grounding the space. "Elise wrote you letters," she says, opening the box to reveal dozens of envelopes, addressed to Elias at his New York office, his Frankfurt apartment, even his old loft. "This was the first," she says, handing him one from Elise's pregnancy. Its postmark a ghost from a lost decade. "Elias, I am pregnant." It reads in her elegant script. "Our baby arrives in February. If you want no part, I will manage." But the door is always open. The words break him, each letter a wound reopened. A final letter, written in the hospital, its handwriting shaky, forgives him. "Love Sophie," it pleads. "She deserves you." Tears stream down Elias's face, hot and unstoppable. "She never knew I did not get them," he whispers, his voice fracturing. "She thought you chose silence," Clara says quietly, her eyes soft with shared grief. "I kept these until I was sure of your heart." The weight of Elise's forgiveness, her hope despite his absence, reshapes him, a seismic shift in his soul. Christmas Eve dawns, and Elias prepares for dinner with Sophie and Clara, his heart lighter despite the ache. His interior designer unveils plans for Sophie's room. Galaxy blue walls, a telescope by the window, bookshelves for her growing collection, a sanctuary for his daughter. Victor calls, his voice tense, authoritative. "You are distracted," he accuses, his words sharp. "The board is restless." "Her name is Sophie." Elias snaps, his anger flaring. "And I know you hid Elise's letters." Silence stretches, heavy and charged. "Meet after the holidays," Victor says, his tone clipped. At Clara's, Sophie launches into Elias's arms, her red velvet dress swirling, the apartment warm with lights and laughter. The table is set with mismatched plates, a testament to love over luxury, and Elias feels at home in a way his penthouse never allowed. He proposes Sophie visit his penthouse, showing her the room he has prepared. Clara agrees to see it, her nod a cautious step forward, a bridge built on trust. January's frost mirrors the chill in Thornton Ventures' boardroom, where Victor confronts Elias, waving a restructuring proposal like a weapon. "You're slashing your role by 40%, he says, his voice sharp, his eyes cold. "I am building a team," Elias counters, his tone even, resolute. "Being a father takes time." "You are risking our legacy," Victor warns, leaning forward, his presence looming. "Like hiding my daughter?" Elias retorts, his anger a control burn. "You stole my choice." Victor's calm cracks, a rare fracture. "You were not ready. I protected you." Sophie's science fair beckons, and Elias rushes across town, weaving through traffic, his heart pounding. He arrives breathless as Sophie begins her solar system presentation, her confidence radiant, bolstered by their late-night model building sessions, their laughter echoing over glue and glitter. She points to her model, explaining orbits with a scientist's precision, and Elias's chest swells with pride. "You came," she says later, her voice soft with wonder, her eyes shining. "I promised, did I not?" Elias replies, the weight of her trust grounding him, anchoring him to this new life. At 2 a.m., Clara calls, her voice panicked, slicing through the quiet of Elias's penthouse. "I am in the hospital. Complications. I need you with Sophie." Elias grabs his keys, the city a blur as he speeds to Brooklyn. He arrives to find Sophie asleep, clutching a stuffed moon, her face peaceful despite the chaos. A neighbor lets him in, her eyes kind but worried. "Is Nana dying?" Sophie asks, waking, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "No," Elias promises, kneeling beside her, his voice steady. "I will always tell you the truth." Dawn breaks, painting the apartment in soft gold, and Elias attempts pancakes, the kitchen filling with smoke as Sophie giggles, her laughter a lifeline. He burns the first batch, the edges charred, but Sophie declares them crispy, her optimism infectious. They pack Clara's favorite novel, her reading glasses, and a jar of hand lotion for the hospital, Sophie insisting each item will help. At the hospital, they find Clara pale but awake, her eyes lighting up as Sophie enters. "My sweet girl," she whispers, opening her arms. While Sophie shows Clara their carefully chosen items, Elias speaks with the doctors in the hallway, their faces grave. The prognosis is guarded. Clara's cancer has responded to treatment, but her heart strains under the medication's weight. She needs rest, minimal stress, the oncologist emphasizes. At least 2 weeks of recovery. Elias returns to the room, his resolve firm. "They want me to stay here a while," Clara says quietly, her voice thin. "Sophie will stay with me," Elias finishes, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "I have prepared a room for her. Remember?" Clara's eyes reflect uncertainty, her fingers tightening on the hospital blanket. "This is happening faster than I expected," she admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted more time to prepare her, to explain." "Understand," Elias says, his voice gentle but sure. "We will manage this together, one step at a time." Later that evening, after Clara has fallen asleep, Elias takes Sophie to his penthouse. The elevators hum a quiet prelude to her wonder. Her eyes widen as the doors open to the expansive space, the city glittering beyond the windows like a private galaxy. "This is where you live?" she asks, her voice awed, taking in the marble floors and sleek furniture. "It is," Elias says, leading her down a hallway. "And I have something to show you." He stops at a door painted with stars, its surface shimmering faintly. "This is for you," he says, opening it to reveal a room designed for her. Twilight blue walls, a constellation ceiling that glows softly, bookshelves waiting for her stories, and a window seat overlooking the park. Sophie stands speechless, then turns to him, tears glistening in her eyes. "You made this for me? Really? Just for you," he confirms, his own eyes misting, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home, Sophie." 2 weeks stretch into 3 as Clara's recovery progresses slowly, each day a delicate balance. Sophie settles into a routine at Elias's penthouse, their mornings filled with breakfast together, cereal and fruit, Sophie's chatter a bright counterpoint to the city's hum. She does homework at his home office desk, her pencil scratching as Elias works nearby, his laptop open but his attention on her. Bedtime stories unfold beneath her glowing constellation ceiling, Sophie's eyes heavy as Elias reads of faraway galaxies. He hires Mrs. Chun, a kind, grandmotherly housekeeper, to help with cooking and childcare when meetings cannot be rescheduled, her warm presence a comfort to them both. But Elias prioritizes being present, rearranging his career around school pickups and dinner times, each moment a reclamation of lost years. One evening, as Sophie naps, Elias finds a note slipped under his door, an unsigned warning. Some secrets are better buried. The handwriting is unfamiliar, but Victor's shadow looms, his influence a specter Elias cannot shake. The note fuels his determination, a reminder that Sophie's safety depends on his vigilance. Clara, recovering, returns to the penthouse for a visit, her steps slow but steadier. Over tea, she and Elias share a quiet moment, Sophie's laughter drifting from her room. "She's asking more questions," Clara says, her eyes on the steam rising from her cup. "She's like Elise, curious, always digging deeper." Elias nods, his heart heavy with the truth they have delayed. "It is time," he says, meeting her gaze. Clara agrees, her nod a shared resolve. They call Sophie to the sofa, the air thick with anticipation. Elias takes a deep breath, his hands steady despite the tremor in his chest. "Sophie," he begins, his voice gentle, "the man in your photo from the day we met, that is me." Sophie's eyes widen, darting between Elias and the memory of the photograph, her small hands clutching the sofa's edge. "You are my daddy," she whispers, her voice a mix of wonder and disbelief. "Yes," Elias says, his voice catching, emotion raw in his throat. "I am. But you never came before," she says, her brow furrowing. Mommy said Daddy lived far away. Clara leans forward, her voice soft but firm. He did not know about you, sweetheart. Your mommy tried to tell him, but the messages got lost. Elias continues, his eyes locked on Sophie's. When I found you that day with your treats, I realized who you were. I have been trying since then to be the father you deserve. Sophie's brow furrows, her mind working through the revelation with a child's serious contemplation. Is that why you made me a room and help with my homework? She asks, her voice small but clear. Yes, Elias says, his heart full. Because I love you very much. But you did not know me before, she says, her eyes searching his. I did not, Elias admits, the admission a weight lifted. And I'm so sorry for all the time I missed. If I had known, Sophie, I would have been there from the start. Sophie considers this, her expression unreadable, then asks the question that matters most. If you're my daddy, can I call you Dad now instead of Mr. Thornton? Elias feels tears spring to his eyes, his vision blurring. Nothing would make me happier, he says, his voice breaking. Sophie nods decisively, then climbs onto his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. I always wanted a dad, she whispers against his shoulder, her voice muffled but certain. Outside, snow begins to fall over Manhattan, soft and silent, blanketing the city in white possibility. Inside, a family, unconventional, newly formed, takes its first real step toward healing. February brings warmth to their unconventional home, the brownstone alive with Sophie's laughter and Clara's steady presence. Sophie's dad is a daily gift, her trust a miracle that reshapes Elias's world. Clara's remission is confirmed, a beacon of hope stabilizing their bond. Victor demands a meeting, his texts insistent, their tone edged with urgency. We need to discuss the Singapore expansion, he writes, and other family matters. Elias finalizes adoption papers, ensuring Sophie's legal tie to him, each signature a vow. At dinner, Sophie is quieter than usual, complaining of stomachache, her face pale. By bedtime, she is feverish, her forehead hot under Elias's hand. Clara and Mrs. Chun, the housekeeper, stay as Elias prepares to meet Victor at a sleek Tribeca restaurant, the air thick with unspoken tension. Victor greets Elias with a nod, his tailored suit impeccable, his demeanor polished but cold. They order drinks, exchanging surface-level pleasantries about market trends and boardroom politics. Finally, Victor places a folder on the table, his movements deliberate. I have reviewed your reorganizations, he says, his voice measured. They make sense. I was wrong to resist them. Elias raises an eyebrow, surprised by the concession, wary of its intent. You have built redundancies, strengthened the team. Victor continues, swirling his bourbon. The company does not suffer when you take time for personal matters. I am glad you see that, Elias says, his tone guarded. Victor leans forward, his eyes sharp. Family is complicated, Elias. Sometimes protecting someone means making difficult decisions for them. Like intercepting Elisa's letters? Elias asks, his voice leveled despite the anger simmering beneath, a fire banked but ready to blaze. Victor does not flinch, his composure a fortress. I thought I was acting in your best interest, he says, his tone infuriatingly calm. You had no right, Elias counters, his restraint fraying. Perhaps not, Victor interrupts, his voice smooth. But consider where you would be if I had not. A struggling young father, career derailed, resentful of responsibilities you were not ready for. Before Elias can respond, his phone rings, Clara's number flashing urgently. He answers, her voice tight with worry. Elias, Sophie is very ill, high fever, vomiting. It came on suddenly. I am on my way, Elias says, already standing, his chair scraping the floor. Victor rises too, his expression a mask of concern that does not reach his eyes. The child is sick, he asks. Her name is Sophie, Elias corrects, his voice sharp, throwing cash on the table. And yes, she's ill. Something in Victor's gaze, a flicker of calculation, quickly masked, triggers a suspicion in Elias's mind. He has seen that look before, in boardrooms where deals were manipulated, pieces moved like chess. You know, Elias says slowly, his voice low, this is the second time Sophie has been unexpectedly ill. The first was after you visited the penthouse last week to drop off documents. Victor's face remains impassive, but his eyes narrow slightly. Surely you are not suggesting. I do not know what I am suggesting. Elias cuts him off, his voice cold, but I intend to find out. At home, Elias finds Sophie feverish and miserable. Clara applying cool compresses to her forehead, her hands steady despite her worry. Within hours, they are in the emergency room, the sterile lights harsh against Sophie's pale face. Doctors order blood work and start 4 fluids, their questions clinical but urgent. Has she ingested anything unusual? The physician asks, clipboard in hand. New medications, household products? Nothing, Elias insists, his voice firm. We are very careful. But as the doctor lists potential causes, food poisoning, infections, toxins, Elias's suspicion crystallizes into a terrible possibility. Taking out his phone, Elias makes a call to his head of security, his voice low to avoid alarming Clara. I need the penthouse swept, he instructs, his words clipped. Every food item, every drink. And I need the security footage from the past week, all of it. By morning, Sophie's condition stabilizes, her fever breaking, her color returning. The test results come back, and Elias's worst fears are confirmed. Traces of benzodiazepines in her system, a prescription medication typically used for anxiety but known to cause severe reactions in children. The same medication Victor takes daily, its bottle a constant in his briefcase. The security footage arrives, and Elias watches it alone in his office. The screens glow, casting shadows across his face. The footage is damning. During his brief visit to the penthouse, Victor lingered in the kitchen, his movements deliberate, his back to the camera. He opens the container of hot chocolate mix, Sophie's favorite, a nightly ritual, and slips something inside, his hands steady, practiced. The act is quick, almost invisible, but unmistakable. Elias's rage surges, a white-hot tide, tempered only by the need to protect Sophie. Victor, his mentor, the man who raised him, has poisoned his daughter. Elias stands at his office window, watching rain wash over Manhattan in relentless sheets, the city blurred and gray. The past 48 hours have been a nightmare. Sophie's emergency room visit, the discovery of benzodiazepines in her system, the footage that revealed Victor's unthinkable betrayal. Sophie is home now, recovered, her laughter filling the penthouse as she works on art projects with Clara, blissfully unaware of the darkness swirling around her. Elias has increased security, replacing all food in the penthouse, adding personnel to monitor every entrance, his trust in the world fractured. His intercom buzzes, Nora's voice cutting through the silence. Mr. Thornton, your uncle is here. Send him in, Elias replies, not turning from the window, his reflection ghostly against the glass. The door opens, and Victor enters, his characteristic confidence unshaken, his tailored suit immaculate. Elias, you have been avoiding my calls, he says, settling into a chair uninvited, his voice smooth, authoritative. Elias finally turns, studying the man who raised him, searching for the monster beneath the polish. Victor looks, as he always has, composed, authoritative, untouchable. Sophie is feeling better, I presume? Victor asks, his tone conversational, but his eyes are sharp, probing. Much better, Elias says, his voice even betraying nothing. The doctors were baffled by her sudden illness until they found traces of benzodiazepines in her system. Your medication, Victor. For a fraction of a second, Victor's composure slips, a crack in his facade, but he recovers swiftly, his smile tight. How unfortunate, he says, leaning back. Children get into everything, do they not? We have footage, Elias interrupts, his voice cold, cutting through Victor's pretense like a blade. Of you putting something in her hot chocolate mix, the same mix she drank before falling ill. Silence stretches between them like a chasm, heavy and charged. Victor's expression hardens, calculation replacing pretense, his mask finally falling. You have lost perspective, he says finally, his voice low, dangerous. This domestic experiment was amusing at first, but it is compromising everything we have built. You poison my daughter, Elias says, his voice icy, each word a controlled detonation. Victor waves a hand dismissively, as if swatting away an inconvenience. A calculated dose, he says, his tone matter-of-fact, chilling in its detachment. Enough to cause symptoms, to suggest instability in your home. No sin permanent. Elias feels bile rise in his throat, his hands clenching into fists. Why? He demands, his voice rising, the calm fracturing. Victor leans forward, his eyes glinting with the cold clarity of a predator. The adoption papers cross my desk, he says, his voice steady. You are making her a legal heir to the Thornton fortune. My fortune, which I spent decades building while raising you. Elias's jaw tightens, disgust mingling with rage. So, this was about money, he asks, his voice thick with contempt. You nearly killed a child for money. Do not be dramatic, Victor corrects, his tone sharp, cutting. It was about control, about bringing you back to reality. This paternal fantasy was fine as a diversion, but making her a Thornton changes everything. The board already whispers about your divided focus. Now you are installing a child, an outsider. As heir to an empire she had no part in building. What happens to my legacy? Your legacy? Elias repeats, his voice dripping with disgust. Was stealing a child from her father part of that legacy? Intercepting Elise's letters. Keeping me from my daughter for 7 years. Victor's eyes narrow, but he does not flinch. I did what was necessary, he insists, his voice calm, unyielding. That woman would have ruined everything. You were not ready for fatherhood. Your ambition was your defining quality. That was not your decision to make, Elias counters, his voice a low growl, his anger barely contained. Everything in your life has been my decision. Victor snaps, standing suddenly, his composure fracturing, his voice rising for the first time. I found you investment opportunities, introduced you to the right people, cleared obstacles from your path. I made you who you are. No, Elias says quietly, his voice steady, a contrast to Victor's unraveling. You made me who you wanted me to be, someone like you. Alone, obsessed with power, incapable of love. Victor's eyes narrow, his face flushing with anger. Sentiment makes you weak, he says, his voice venomous. Always has. You are wrong, Elias says, his voice calm but resolute. Sophie makes me stronger. She reminds me why any of this matters. He unlocks his desk drawer, removing a folder, its contents meticulously prepared. These are the new corporate documents, he says, sliding them across the desk. I have dissolved our partnership. Your shares remain intact, but you are removed from operations and the board, effective immediately. Victor's face flushes deeper, his hands trembling as he stares at the documents. You cannot do this, he says, his voice low, dangerous. I built this company. You poisoned a child, Elias replies, his voice even, unyielding. I have footage, medical reports, witnesses. Sign these papers, or I will take everything else, including your freedom. You would not dare file charges, Victor says, his voice rising, a desperate edge creeping in. The scandal would devastate Thornton Ventures. Try me, Elias says, his voice steel, his gaze unflinching. Family means everything to me now, Victor, and you are no longer my family. Victor stares at the documents, decades of manipulation crumbling before him, his empire slipping through his fingers. With a trembling hand, he signs, his signature jagged, a final act of defeat. You will regret this, he says, rising, his voice venomous, his eyes burning. When a novelty wears off, when the sacrifices pile up, when you realize what you have thrown away for a child who is not even, she is mine, Elias cuts him off, his voice a quiet thunder. In every way that matters, something you will never understand. Victor reaches for the door, then turns, his smile venomous, a final barb. We will see how fatherhood suits you when she learns the truth, that her father abandoned her mother, left them to struggle while he built an empire. She already knows, Elias replies, his voice calm, resolute. All of it, and she has forgiven me. That is what real family does. Victor's smile falters, and he leaves without another word, the door closing with a soft click that echoes like a gavel. Spring blooms in New York, cherry blossoms painting Central Park in delicate pink clouds. Elias, Sophie, and Clara settle into a cozy Upper West Side brownstone, a home alive with laughter and crayon art. The adoption is finalized. Sophie Elizabeth Thornton, a name etched in love. Today marks a year since that fateful afternoon when a little girl selling treats changed Elias's life forever. In the garden, Sophie arranges lilies in a simple vase, her sundress swaying in the gentle breeze. "They're perfect, Dad," she calls, her smile a mirror of Elise's, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. They visit Elise's grave, a quiet ritual they have established, bringing fresh flowers and stories of their lives. Sophie leads the way through the cemetery paths, her steps confident, a drawing clutched in her small hands. A family portrait, stick figures under a starry sky, Elise a smiling figure watching from a cloud. "I made this for you, Mommy," she says, placing it beneath the vase of lilies. It is all of us together. Elias kneels beside his daughter, emotion tightening his throat. On the stone, Elise's name catches the sunlight. Elise Elizabeth Bennett, beloved mother, daughter, teacher. "Your mom would be so proud of you," he says softly, his voice thick. "You know that, right?" Sophie nods, her small face solemn. "Nana says she watches over us. Do you think that is true?" "I do," Elias says, surprising himself with his certainty. "I think she brought us together, even though you and Mommy could not be together when I was born." This is a question they have discussed often during quiet moments. How sometimes love stories do not follow simple paths, how adults make mistakes, how timing and circumstance can separate even those who care deeply. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Elias explains, his voice gentle. But true connections find their way back. "Your mom made sure I would find you, even after she was gone." Sophie considers this, then turns to face her father fully. "I'm glad you found me, even if it took a really long time." "So, am I, Sophie?" Elias says, his voice breaking. "More than you will ever know." They stay by Elise's grave for nearly an hour, Sophie sharing stories about school, Elias adding memories of Elise from their brief time together. Clara occasionally wipes away tears, but they are no longer tears of bitterness or loss. Rather, they acknowledge the beauty of this unlikely family formed from fragments. As they prepare to leave, Sophie suddenly wraps her arms around the headstone in a gentle hug. "Thank you for my daddy," she whispers to her mother's memory. "I'm taking good care of him, just like you asked." Elias blinks back tears. Elise's last letter had indeed asked Sophie to take care of him if they ever found each other, a final act of forgiveness and hope from a woman who had every reason to resent him. "I have news," Clara says as they walk back to the car, her voice steady. "The doctor says I am officially in remission." Elias embraces her, relief flooding through him. "That is wonderful. Does that mean you are all better?" Sophie asks, her face brightening. "It means the medicine worked," Clara explains, smiling. "I will need to be careful, but yes, much better." In the car, Sophie falls asleep against Clara's shoulder, peaceful after the emotional visit. Elias drives carefully through the city streets, occasionally catching Clara's eye in the rearview mirror. "You have come a long way," she observes quietly, "from the man Elise described to me years ago." "I hope so," Elias replies, his voice soft. "I'm trying to be worthy of them both." Clara nods thoughtfully. "Elise would approve of the father you have become, different from what either of you imagined, perhaps, but right all the same." As they arrive home, Elias carries the sleeping Sophie inside. Her room, designed with constellations like the penthouse version, but warmer, with window seats and bookshelves built to grow with her, is the heart of their new home. He tucks her in gently, brushing a strand of hair from her peaceful face. On her bedside table sit 3 treasures. The photograph of Elias and Elise that revealed their connection, the star charm bracelet he gave her for Christmas, and a small, worn book of poetry that was Elise's favorite. Past, present, and future, all contained in this small sanctuary created for a child who unintentionally saved him from a life of hollow success. "Sleep well, my star," he whispers, using the nickname that evolved naturally between them. Outside Sophie's room, Elias pauses in the hallway, taking in the transformation of his life. The walls that once displayed expensive art now hold Sophie's drawings, family photographs, and height markers tracking her growth. The sounds of the home, Clara humming in the kitchen, the distant ticking of a grandfather clock they found in an antique store, create a symphony more valuable than any business acquisition. He had spent decades building a fortune, only to discover his greatest treasure was waiting on a sidewalk with homemade treats and her mother's forgiveness in her pocket. Elias whispers, "Thank you, Elise," to the woman who loved him enough to leave the door open for him to find his way home, even if that journey took a decade and a chance encounter to complete. Some treasures, love, family, forgiveness, outshine any fortune. Do not miss another story that could change how you see the world. Subscribe to Daily Narrated Stories now. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Comment your thoughts, share this with someone who needs hope, and join our community today. Time is fleeting. Let us grow together.